Okay, you want to say the pledge or anything to start?
Yeah, guys, let's say this. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. We'll turn it right over to Steve.
Okay, guys, how you doing? I gotta catch up with you for the new upcoming season. There's been a limited number of rule changes, so as we're talking about some of this stuff today, if a question pops into your mind, jot it down so at the end we can discuss it, because we should have a little free time at the end. I wanted to start off by letting you know what's going on. Yesterday, some of the people that were in the evening meeting let informed them that I'm moving out of the state, but I'm going to be moving to South Carolina because I'm going to be moving down there closer to my grandchildren and stuff. But they are going to allow me to continue to be the state interpreter for a few more years because the majority of what I do as a state interpreter is done electronically. You know, you guys call me on the phone and email me questions and I can get back to you. And the thinking of the committee, I believe, was that there's no reason why I can't give you the wrong answer from there just as much as from New York. So word for word. It's exactly what they said. So now here's the thing. My phone number is the same. It's still, if you got it in your directory, your phone number is going to be the same. However, if you have me in your contacts list, my email address has changed because I've changed carriers, not because I moved. So check your roster. And if you don't have a roster, I'll give it to you. It's a very simple one to remember. It's Steve Dalberth at gmail.com. No N, no Steven, just Steve Dalberth at gmail.com. Okay? All right. Very good. One of the things that came up this year at this year's meeting that wasn't included as a rule change, but I'd like to bring you aware that's going to occur, it's very likely that next year they will accept the use of the two-piece singlet. And that will be a tight-fitting compression shirt, which is sleeveless or short-sleeved, which has also tight-fitting compression shorts. They usually refer to it as a doublet as opposed to a singlet. They've been using them at the collegiate level, right, Billy, for some time now. And the big concern that you guys are going to have is they're going to come untucked and all that stuff, and it's not an issue. The committee, the rules committee, in fact, passed to allow them for this year. However, it got hung up in the second committee, which was concerned about there not being enough product available for the upcoming demand. They are going to meet in April with the 3 major manufacturers of wrestling uniforms and have a meeting of the minds and make sure that they can provide adequate product for what they suspect will be the demand. So that's in all likelihood going to be a done deal for next season. All right, we'll move along to the rule changes for this year, of which there are only 2. The first one is kind of a strange rule change because it's been an evolution. About 5 years ago, I came back to this meeting and I explained to you that when a defensive wrestler commits an infraction during an imminent near-fall situation or a near-fall situation, anytime that occurred, we were going to apply Rule 511-2 F, G, and H, depending on whether it was imminent, whether the 2-point or the 3-point near-fall had been earned. And then 2 years ago, they changed it and said, now, we're only going to award those additional points if we end up having to stop the match as a result of the infraction committed by the defensive wrestler. So, we're back to the original one. So not to confuse you, I'm just going to tell you how we're going to call it in the future so that we're all on the same page. From this point on, when the defensive wrestler commits any infraction, whether it's technical violation, unsportsmanlike conduct, illegal hold, or unnecessary roughness, while near-fall points are imminent, and remember, imminent is described as 90 degrees or less, or while near-fall criteria is being met, if possible, the referee will stop whatever the action is. Let's say in this example, he's pulling the kid's hair. They knock it off and let the kid know that just cost you points, stay off the hair. The match continues. Now, if you're holding a 2-point near fall and suddenly the kid bellies out, we have to stop the match for the penalty. But since you're holding a 2-point near fall, you're going to change that and apply Rule 511-2G and go, that's a 3-point near fall, the extra point being what we used to call the stoppage point, and also award the opponent the penalty for the infraction. And that will be true on every near fall. So if you now are holding a 3 and he commits the infraction, when the match is stopped, now in the description I just gave you, we said the kid bellied out. The change here is that's going to bring us into compliance with what it was several years ago is at some point the match will be stopped. Time will expire, they'll go out of bounds, the kid will belly out, and when that happens, you're always going to award the extra points. So once that infraction is committed, this kid's going to get a double whammy. He's going to get 511-2 applied to him, as well as the penalty chart applied to him. And everybody comprehend what I've just put out there? Good. Yes.
What happens if the top man creates something that becomes illegal and you have to stop it?
Okay. Again, you're stopping the match. Once you stop it, if you're stopping the match for any reason, once he commits that infraction, you're still going to get the double whammy. But now you're going to also award the penalty point to the bottom guy.
Okay.
Yes. The defensive wrestler in those situations has given up his ability to score offensive points. So once he does this, he can't get a reversal, for example, but he still has the ability to score points if the offensive wrestler commits some infraction. That's still true. And the other question that may come to your mind is, what if you're in a pitting situation, you've got your 5 count now, you're holding a 3, the kid reaches up, pulls the headgear, you slap it off the headgear and say, that just cost you a point. Now in your head, you know you're going to come up with a 4 and a 1 for the TV, grasping the headgear. Now the defensive wrestler begins to bleed, and you actually have a 5-11-2 situation. When that occurs, you simply stop the match, but there's no rulebook support to award additional points there. You're going to treat it the same way, but you do have to stop the match because of the injury or blood. But there's no additional penalty for that.
But that would be the stoppage.
They're still going to give you a stoppage point, but there's no rulebook support to give an additional stoppage point. And that was a question that I forwarded to Mr. Hopkins at the Federation to make sure, before I came to this meeting, that I would have the correct response, and that was his. He said there's no rulebook support.
That would be the stoppage.
It is.
Stopping it
And
because of the blood.
we have to stop it because of the blood, but he was going to get that extra point irrespective of that, okay?
So you're still
So
getting
So he's still getting his extra point, but we're also stopping the match for the blood, and so that's your stoppage. Yes, Leo?
So give us that example, what would that score be at the end of that scenario?
Okay. Defensive wrestler's on his back. You're holding a 3. Offensive wrestler's doing fine. All of a sudden, an infraction. You slap it off. That just cost you a point. Now, you notice that the defensive wrestler is injured or begins to bleed. You stop the match. 4 points, near fall. 1 point, penalty. Whether that's a illegal hold, technical violation. And that's as far as you can go with it, Leo.
Screen as well?
Screen as well. We're stopping the match for the screen, but we can't allow any additional points because there's no rulebook support for that.
Well, if the offensive guy commits an infraction,
Then we're going to stop the match.
can he?
In a situation like he just described, everything's the same, Leo, okay? Only this time, the offensive guy switches off to an illegal headlock, okay? Now we stop the match immediately for an illegal hold on the part of the offensive wrestler, and the scenario would be this. 4 points near fall, 1 point for the technical violation or illegal hold on the defensive guy, and then 1 point for the other wrestler for the illegal headlock.
So he can, the defensive guy can
He
score.
can score due to a penalty. He just can't score any
Not
offensive
action.
points. He can't score offensive points. Okay, so we can't get an escape or reversal once he commits the infraction. But if you said he couldn't score any points, you would be giving carte blanche to the offensive guy to do whatever he wants.
Nuts, yeah.
So that'd be craziness.
Steve,
So,
Oh yeah, let's take it one at a time here. Hang on, I got Matt in front.
I don't want to drag it out.
It's
I
okay.
just wanted clarification on one thing. If the bottom man is committing a technical violation, you're slapping that off, you're letting the
Yes.
action continue. What if it's illegal?
Okay, that's a
Must
fair
be
question.
stopped, right?
No.
No.
Rule 8.2 says when the defensive man commits an infraction during a near fall situation, the match will not be stopped unless it's necessary for safety reasons. If he's molesting the eyes in such a way that it's unsafe to continue, you stop it. But otherwise, it's a delayed call.
Well, we're applying our judgment, and
That's right. Only when it's so severe that it would be unsafe to continue. Otherwise, even if he commits an illegal hold, I've given you illustrations where he committed a technical violation. It could be something like he's literally pulling the kid's hair. And that's unnecessary roughness, right? We're still going to slap that off. But if we can't get him to let go of it, you'd say, well, look, I can't let him keep pulling the kid's hair, and then in that case, you'd stop it. So it's a judgment call as to whether it'll be stopped or not. But do remember that 8.2 says we don't stop the match to penalize the defensive wrestler in a pitting situation unless necessary for safety reasons. Yes?
Just to be clear, in the near fall situation, on that end, you're stopping the match.
It's right.
Okay, but my point is that it doesn't really say that. It says at the next match stoppage, which is out of bounds or time. You're not letting them continue once that near fall situation
Here's the
happens.
thing. Just remember it this way. Once that infraction has committed, make a mental note. And what I do is, when it happens and I'm holding 3, I actually put 4 fingers out there so I won't forget, because it might be some time expired before this occurs. And then I remember Jerry Deal telling me this. I said, does this mean every time he commits the infraction he gets the point? He says to me, just think about it. At some point, you're going to stop this match. The clock is going to expire, they're going to go out of bounds, the kid's going to belly out, the other kid's going to commit a penalty, and when that happens, you're going to apply Rule 511-2. And so that will be your stoppage. The next stoppage is for whatever the stoppage could be simply for a potentially dangerous situation. Maybe it's a stalemate. Whatever happens that makes you stop that match, the additional points will be awarded to sort of give the guy who committed an infraction on his back additional penalties to sort of, so that he won't commit an infraction so readily, perhaps. Okay? Yeah, then, about
So in the same scenario, a guy could possibly get 6 points.
Well, he could get 6 points if he had the 4-point near fall,
Right.
and we were in the 2-point penalty sequence. If he already had 2 prior penalties and this was his third, it would be a 4-point near fall and a 2-point penalty based on the sequence of the scoring in the penalty chart. Or he could get a 2-point takedown and a 3-point near fall, which turns to a 4-point near fall. But I don't know what other scenario he could get.
The way you described it,
Oh.
Pull the hand away.
Okay.
and mix it up.
If he commits multiple infractions, he could actually become at some point disqualified.
When you described it, the top man committed a penalty, he only got 5 points because of the stoppage. And then, if the guy didn't commit a penalty and he bellied out or whatever, the stoppage point.
I think we're making it too complicated.
Yeah.
Okay. We'll start over.
Don't say that I'm overthinking it.
No, perhaps, yeah, that's good. Anytime there's a near fall situation, anytime, whether it's imminent, 90 degrees or less, and he commits the infraction, or whether near fall criteria are being met. If you're holding 2 and he commits an infraction, you're going to give 3. If you're holding 3, you're going to give 4. In addition to those points, you're going to award a penalty point. And if it happened to be his third penalty, it would be 2 penalty points. Now, taking it a step further, it's possible that he could be molesting the eyes. You slap it off and you say, stay out of the eyes, that just cost you a point. And he goes back and he does it again. That's a second penalty point. And you slap it off and he does it again. That would be a third penalty point, and that could actually end up in disqualification. Okay? Now, if he's doing it that outrageously, it may be a situation like Matt said, where we have to stop it because we're concerned for safety. But certainly, the potential for that to occur does exist. Okay? Don't say yes if you don't really get it, because I want us to all know what we're talking about.
You gotta tell the defensive wrestler that you are being penalized. That's gonna be a point.
You should always notify him, because that is less likely to go back. If you don't say anything, he's going to go right back there and go, well, he just slapped me off.
Or
notify that kid, take it off and say, that just cost you a point.
The one-loss situation with the scoreboard and the crowd is gonna be.
Yeah, but it's just like when there's a guy comes out of criteria or lock edge, you need to notify these guys because they don't know what's going on, and notify them loudly. Yes. Now there's nothing that says if you can't take a coach to the table and say you didn't tell the guy, but I'm just telling you as a good mechanics, you should absolutely notify the guy, because then there's less incentive for him to go back and start to do that same exact action. He knows it just cost him a point. He goes, oh, Billy Dorn don't want you to poke the guy in the eyes. Oh, what a jerk. You all right? He's so big. Yeah, Dave.
The same scenario, only there's no technical violation, there's no infraction, only bleeding occurs.
Now you apply the scream rule. My only point was you can't apply it twice no matter what happens. You can only apply the scream rule one time.
So if you're holding 3, he starts
And
bleeding.
he starts bleeding. You come up with the scream rule, just like you would had he committed the infraction. But you can't go, oh, he committed an infraction and he bled? That won't happen. Okay. I think that was where the confusion was coming in.
I just got one more on that. If during that whole situation, the kid's getting penalized and everything, and he's able to roll out and get an escape,
Boom.
That's a stoppage.
That's a stoppage, and he goes back down. He can't score once he committed the infraction. And the same thing happens, and he gets a reversal. You stop the match, no reversal, penalize accordingly, and put the bottom man back down and start him as if they'd gone out of bounds. Jake?
Can you go to imminent?
Yes. Once the wrestler's shoulders break 90 degrees, and the wrestler screams out or bleeds, we stop the match. All we can give there is 2, because they were imminent back points. Guy breaks 90, breaks 45. Now he's at 45 and you swing once, 1 count, and he bleeds or gives an indication of an injury, and you stop the match. 2. Because again, he hadn't met the criteria for a 2-point near fall, so you're giving him the 2 points for imminent back points. Now, take it a step further, he goes to 45 or 4 inches or high bridge or both elbows, and you get to a 4 count, and he begins to bleed or gives you an indication of an injury. That's a 3-point near fall, because he's earned a 2, so you're adding the 1. You got to a 4 count. He didn't earn a 3-pointer yet, so he's going to get the 2-point near fall he had earned plus a stoppage point, which makes it a 3-point near fall, and it will be indicated as a 3-point near fall on the score sheet. Not 2 and 1, but 3 and F. If you get all the way to a 5 count and an injury occurs, an indication of an injury or bleeding, he's earned the 3. You give him the additional point, the stoppage point, and it's a 4-point near fall. And again, it goes NF4 on the score sheet.
So what if you're imminent and the guy holds his hair? Is it 2 plus 1 for the full hair?
Yes. He's broke 90, and this will usually happen. The guy, let's say he breaks the 90, and the guy grabs a hold of the hair and he pulls it in such a way that he's able to stop him from going all the way to his back. Now he bellies out. The moment he bellies out, this pinning situation or the imminent situation has concluded. He would then be penalized for the infraction of pulling the hair, as well as the 2-point for the 5.11.2, which
Really?
scream him.
Yeah, really the stoppage is
In that instance, it's a 2-point stoppage penalty because that's our only option. Because he hadn't really earned any points, but our only option there is to give him a 2-point.
okay.
Plus 1. Plus the 1.
Plus the 1 for the penalty. Yeah, that penalty doesn't go away. And everybody clear now? Are we good?
There's no difference between imminent back points and a 1 count.
That's correct. There was for years, so that's why there's so many. There was a time when all you had to do was be in criteria momentarily, and you were going to get that 2-point plus the 1, no more. Now you've got to have a 2 count. You have to actually earn the 2 to get the 3.
Right.
Okay.
Because imminent.
So here you're going to get 2.
You can be imminent or in criteria, but if you don't count 2.
And they said if you get a 1 count, you really haven't earned a 2 yet, but they're going to come probably if you don't commit this infraction. So once you get to a 2 count, then you get the 3. And once you get to a 5 count, then you get the 4.
So you get the imminent 2s with no stop.
Well, the 2 are your stoppage points. Those are your stoppage points. Here's what happened. You remember 5 years ago when we were calling it just this way, and that's when the term stoppage point came in. Then they modified the rule to say we weren't going to give those unless we stopped the match as a result of the infraction, and the term stoppage point disappeared. Well, now it's back. However, it's not a very accurate statement because, like you said, it really should be considered 2 stoppage points. But that's why I always used the rule number 5.11.2, or I use the term screen rule because that's the term is the common vernacular in the sport. Yeah, Scotty.
Say a guy hits a headlock and drops the guy right to his back.
Yes.
Okay.
From a
And
neutral, boom, right to the back.
right to the back, and I've heard talk in the past about what they call a 1-2 swipe or something like that.
Okay. Why don't we hold that till the end? Please write that down. 'Cause I'll explain
I'm
it
not
to you.
talking about that, the 1-2 swipe in per se, but when it comes to an illegal action, when he throws him right to his back and we give him a takedown.
Okay. Here's what you got to ask yourself. When that situation occurred, what was the illegal action? Was the headlock illegal?
No, the defensive guy does an illegal something, pulls his hair, puts his fingers in his eyes, right when he's on his back.
Okay.
We're throwing up a takedown, and we haven't counted back points.
That's fine. It doesn't matter if any time at all it went off the clock, and even if you haven't had a chance to do this. If they were still up neutral, and he hasn't had no back exposure yet, no back exposure, and the guy who's defending the takedown does something illegal, you're simply going to be able to penalize for the illegal action. But once this guy hits the headlock and those shoulders turn to 90 degrees, on the way down you're talking about, he does something, he grabs the eyes and he pulls like this.
Mm-hmm.
When they hit, you could have a takedown there when they hit, and you would also have the penalty point for the eye gouge, but because they landed in imminent near fall criteria, you could also apply the scream rule there. And I've actually seen this situation. Let's take the illegal action out of it. The guy hits a hard pancake. The guy goes boom. He goes right down to his back, and the guy when he hits, he goes ugh, and the referee stops the match. Now you have a choice here. Was it unnecessary roughness, and did he put him down so hard that he injured him? In which case you would award unnecessary roughness and start him neutral. Or is it a takedown? And if it's a takedown, it's also a near fall. Because he's got control, he's in criteria, and he gave an indication of an injury, okay? So those are the two variables that can happen. When did the infraction occur? If it occurs once 90 degrees have been met, then you're going to get, if the takedown has been earned, the takedown and the near falls. And the argument sometimes is from coaches and officials, well, when he hit, he was hurt. He couldn't defend himself. That's precisely the way the rule has been written to occur. All it says is if you're in criteria and you scream out or give an indication of an injury or bleed, the additional points will be awarded.
It would be 2, 2, and 1. If he gouged on the weekend.
Well, here's the thing. It would be 2, 2, and 1 for the same wrestler. Yeah, 2 for the takedown. You got to give him the scream rule 2 and the 1 point infraction. But if the infraction happened while they were still up in the short offense, let's say they haven't had exposure yet, then you're going to just say, we're still neutral, because the infraction should have stopped the match because there's no delay there. And there's no such thing as a scream rule takedown. You know what I mean? You can't award a takedown because he should have been there. If he's about to get a takedown and the other guy commits an infraction, at that point the rule requires us to stop the match. So you can't say, well, I'm going to let him finish this.
Someday high school will
There's
catch
no
up with the
takedown
right
imminent.
rules.
In other words, yeah, there's no imminent takedown.
Oh, yes, we should be.
I didn't say there shouldn't be. We have a motion on the floor. I wish it were that easy.
Steve, so guy shoots in, guy's facing, he falls back and lands on his head and boom.
If he falls back and lands on his head, you've got to ask yourself, did he just get slammed? Was whatever occurred unnecessary roughness, or was it just accidentally he fell back and bumped his head? And he's on his back, you stop the match because you've got a concern for an injury.
Right.
But if the wrestler is injured, gives an indication of an injury or bleeds, you apply the scream rule. And so, even though it's unfortunate, because it can happen, the guy was just a little
I've seen it.
less experienced perhaps.
Yeah.
And he hits his head, then we're going to stop it because we're concerned for the safety, and particularly in light of the fact that he's talking about a head injury, which is potential concussion. But the scream rule applies.
Steve, kid shoots in on a double and they connect heads. Kid captures the double, they go to the mat, kid flat on his back and he's injured. He's in criteria, he's got the double, but he's not really holding him in criteria, he's just on the double. I mean, I got 2, I don't have the imminent near fall there, do I? I mean, he's got control.
That's a good question. Now here's the deal. If when they hit, you do have to, this is the question you got to ask yourself. Does he have control right now? And if the answer to that question is yes, is the guy beyond 90 degrees? And if he's not, well then there's no extra points. But if he is, even though it's only instantaneous, he's in criteria, breaking the 90 degrees, you got a 4-pointer. Okay?
Boy,
And that 90 degrees, I know, but it should have been being called that way for a long time, and we finally got, because it used to be such this nebulous term, imminent near falls, and we were thinking, well, what does that mean? Is it if the half's in, then maybe they're imminent? But now they've defined it for us. If that 90-degree criteria is met, even if they hit and momentarily he's breaking that 90 degrees, you got to come up with the 4-point there, unless, and add this proviso, unless he put him there as a result of unnecessary roughness, in which case we'll take the call away. We'll
I
take
also
the,
think
take
in
that
that particular situation, you have to also ask yourself, did the banging of heads prevent the defensive
Let me
wrestler
go on.
from
That's
defending
a valid point.
Yeah.
Let's make sure that we're clear on it, because
If
that
they
is
didn't
true.
have nothing.
If a person surrenders a position of neutrality or a position of advantage as a result of a sustained injury, we're going to disregard the action that occurs following that injury. For example,
That's where I'm going with
you
that.
see a guy, and they're in a short offense, and he's trying to hold him, and all of a sudden you realize he just tore his labrum, and he lets go, and he goes, ah! And it's clear to you that the reason he pulled his arm out because he sustained an injury. Now this kid scampers around behind, and some refs will go 2 there. However, those are 2 points that should be awarded because he gave up that neutral position because of a sustained injury. I remember a college match once where the guy was trying to cut away, and as he tried to cut away, the kid that he was wrestling pulled his arm in like this, let him go. And I agree that there should have been 1 there. And as the kid who was injured, now the former offensive wrestler, he goes just like this. Boom! The defensive guy jumps on him. They wanted to give him 1 and 2, but the 2 should never have been awarded, and the referee went to the table and explained that to the coach. I can't award him those points. He was had surrendered because of a sustained injury. So those are the factors that you all have to deal with when deciding whether it's a takedown or whether or not he gave up that position due to a sustained injury. Well, that went well.
Oh, wait a minute.
Okay. They're beating us on trade, they're beating us at the border. I love this microphone, it's so handy. Okay.
You can build a wall between the coaches.
I am going to build a wall between the coaches. They gotta text me their complaints.
They're gonna pay for it.
Okay. Wow. Okay, the next one is even harder. No, it's not. The next thing is they've added a section in the rule book which describes a particular hold as being potentially dangerous. In my world, there would be two different terms for potentially dangerous. Those that we stop and those that we monitor. But we use the same term for both. I wish they would say, these are potentially dangerous, so we're going to watch them. And these are dangerous, so we're going to stop them. But they don't. They use that same term interchangeably. So we as a group of officials and the Federation as an interpreting body, they tell us which of these situations apply where. Where the rule change comes in is they are now specifically making a potentially dangerous hold that we must stop under certain criteria. And here are the criteria. If the defensive wrestler is in a stand, or if they're neutral, even if they're neutral, if they're in a rear standing position, anytime they're in a rear standing position and there's a body lock, and with the body lock, one arm is tied up or both arms are tied up. So he's got either one arm or two arms trapped. Wrestling can continue. And this is a situation which is, we monitor it. However, if it gets to a point where he begins to lift his opponent, as soon as the lift begins, that's an automatic match stoppage for potentially dangerous. So when they're in that position with one or two arms trapped, watch for the guy to step in. Because when he steps in to get his hips in, that's when he's going to lift them. When that happens, that's when you should be hitting your whistle. If he steps in and you wait until the lift occurs, you're probably going to be too late. So try to anticipate it, but keep in mind, that is a stoppage. As soon as you see that he's going to lift, we have to stop it. Now, the way we call other standing situations with arms tied up will remain identical. And they give us some help in that regard. In the back of your rule book, there's a couple pictures. Let me just give you an example. Photo 102 shows a guy with an arm bar and a half. When a guy has an arm bar and a half, that's not necessarily a match that you have to stop, but you must monitor it very carefully. Because if you think that there's going to be a mat return, which is going to put the guy back down to the mat to potentially sustain an injury, we have to stop it. It's not automatic, and there's nothing automatic about that. If he's in a double arm bar, again, this is a position where the guy's here, he's got two arm bars, he's very vulnerable. And in those two situations, we're much more likely to stop the match than not, because we don't know where he's going to go with it. So those two are kind of hairy. And they told us in two different publications, when in doubt, err on the side of caution and call the potentially dangerous to stop it. But there are other times when the guy will have an arm tied up. For example, in photo 101, where he's got a cross wrist and a bicep, and he's here. That's perfectly legitimate, and it's much less dangerous than the two previously described positions. Double arm bar half, you're a lot more vulnerable. If the guy just has a cross wrist, your opponent has a cross wrist, and he's on the bicep here, if you have your book, look at that, photo 101, you're going to see that he's not too vulnerable. He's still got an arm here, but they never go that way. So what we're watching for as an official is, I've got this here. Train your officials to watch this leg. And when you see this leg start to come this way, when it starts to pass his leg, here, he's going to post it. You need to stop that. Because the next thing is he's going to take it right to that exposed shoulder. And that's when it becomes potentially dangerous to be stopped. But he puts himself in a position to trip. Dave, Grass, can you come here a minute?
Yeah, that's a tough position because guys are offensive when they hit that Clemson roll.
Oh, yeah.
Yes. Here's why I'm paraphrasing all this, but if you read word for word what this says, and by the way, this is not my terminology in most cases, it came directly from this publication. And they said they know that there's functional wrestling that can occur from this position because guys will take this, and like you say, I don't have a problem loading them up here and taking them into that tilt position, Where you're gonna have a problem is when you see the guy come here. If you see this happening, blow your whistle, okay? Because I am going to take him right now to that exposed shoulder. Everybody, can you see that from back there? Here is no problem. I can load him up, boom. But when you see the guy come here, stop it, okay? You see him here, and you see him step in, stop it. He's here. You might want to just stop this one all the time because nothing good's going to come from this, okay? But the varying degrees of where there's dangerous and potentially dangerous is sort of left up to us. We needed to apply some guidelines, and these are the guidelines we've been given. And they're pretty easily usable. Okay?
So Steve,
Yes, sir.
both arms tied up face to face, bear hug situation, head is up with chest to chest.
Chest to chest?
Yeah, that's fine.
That's still wrestling. We're still wrestling there. Yes. Then as long as they don't throw a salto or some type of maneuver that's been specifically described as unnecessary or illegal.
Arm through the crotch.
That's another one. With the arm through the crotch, we have to apply that same dictate. Use the same type of caution. And as I said twice, 2 or 3 times I mentioned, it's err on the side of caution. When he starts to lift him and trip, you may need to stop that. And you're going to receive some negative input from the coaches many times, but it's your responsibility to make sure that the wrestlers are safe. And as again, like I said, err on the side of safety.
Dave,
Yes.
in the scenario that you got, it says, body lock. So if he's got a 2-on-1 standing up.
That's not a body lock.
Right. You still
Yes.
let that go, right?
And there's 2 different places in the book where it talks about this issue, and in both of them they use that term because I wasn't sure what their rationale was, but both times it says in a body lock.
Okay.
But the 2-on-1, we're going to apply the same cautions that we did with the other scenarios where we had an arm tied up. If you think he gets the 2-on-1 and he goes to trip, you can't let him take him over that hip.
Right. Sorry, I may have faded for a second, but in the beginning, were these only rear standing position situations, or were they?
Yes. All of these scenarios here are describing wrestlers in a rear standing position with 1 or 2 arms tied up.
So what we're saying is if a guy, like I just heard a question, he's got a body lock and he's got guys both arms trapped right here, we're belly to belly.
Unless you feel there's a potential for injury.
That's dangerous.
If anytime you feel there's a potential for injury, well, we're not going to take the bear hug away from a guy because he might step in and just drive that guy right over. Okay, and
right,
so
but if he's got both his arms trapped and he's got them up in the air, what protection does that guy have?
You're the referee.
You blow the whistle then. If you feel there's a potential for injury. Okay.
Right.
I wrote this down. It says if the ref feel there is a potential for injury. Quoting, if the ref feels there is a potential for injury, stop the match. Sometimes when someone will ask me a question, they're describing a position that they're seeing in their mind, and then I'm envisioning a slightly different, and I thought he was just in like a serious body lock where they're both on their feet, and he just kind of puts his chin in and drives him over. I'm not stopping that.
Right.
Now, and as I say, if he steps in, launches the guy, I'll give him 5, right? But really, but you always have the ability to stop the match as potentially dangerous if you think there will be unsafe impact upon the return of the
I'm
contestant.
saying if he steps in and tries to throw him like a headlock. I think what he's saying is if you got both arms and you step to try to throw it like a headlock.
You probably should be stopping that. Yeah, here, and here, he's going to right to his back.
I think that's what you're talking about.
Yeah, I mean,
And I think here again, this seems to be the culprit. This little baby right here seems to be the problem. And the coaches are going to say, I taught him that move, and I get it. But our responsibility is more geared toward the safety.
Because it describes all rear standing positions, and
Yeah.
I'm in a match and I stop that.
Here's the thing though, our rules for potentially dangerous haven't changed at all.
Right.
Continue to call everything else like you always did. Okay?
Standing half, that hasn't changed?
Then not, it hasn't changed.
Yeah, that rule in the standing half, a lot of officials, our guys do a really good job of it. We go out of the area sometimes. Guys, a half on, the free hand is the key. If it's wrist, if it's bar, if you do a tight waist on a half Nelson, this all started 20 years ago when Gene Mills, guys would have a Mills ride out with the far wrist and a half. The guy would stand up and they would teach step in and hip toss it. So the guy went to the mat unprotected.
Yeah.
Well, if a guy says they've got a half on, the bottom guy may be getting 1 and they're stopping, potentially dangerous many times. when
If it's a question of safety versus the guy scoring a point, you've got to go with the
Well,
safety.
well, but they're saying by application.
But I want you to understand, the description you just gave me, the guy had a half Nelson and a tight waist.
Yeah.
In the picture and illustration 101, the guy has, or 102, he's got a bar and a half. This is a much different position.
Right.
The one you're describing, he still has some means of defense, and in that, I'm giving him much greater latitude.
Right.
The bar arm and the half, you're really susceptible to
A
a
lot of places, just by, old habit, it's by application, they see a half standing, stop.
But just a half alone standing isn't enough. With a tight waist and a half, again, Scott, you've got the ability to stop the match if you feel there is potential for injury, but it's not automatic. And if they're
What
calling
I'm concerned of as a coach is that my bottom guy's gonna score and escape.
Mhm.
He's really getting penalized from having potential to score, because the guy has a goofy half on, his other hand's doing nothing.
And then, let me make sure I'm clear. In the situation you're talking about, though, it's not the same one I'm talking about. The half
Right.
Nelson, the half Nelson with an
Right.
arm bar is clearly different than a half Nelson with a
Exactly.
tight waist.
Exactly.
In that instance, or if it's a half Nelson and a pump handle, again, that's pretty precarious.
difference, yeah.
If he has a potential for protection, we'll allow the match to continue unless or until the referee feels there is a potential for injury. So there's an awful lot of latitude there that they have. But keep in mind, like his point is, don't stop it with the guy still has the arm if he can protect himself. But when you see him going to a direction where he can't, like here's the arm, right, and he starts to take him this way, then you need to stop it.
Well, it's a cousin to the guy in the bottom stands up, and he's ready to get an escape, and the referee hits the top guy for stalling.
Yeah.
That's, like, from the coach's perspective, that's
Okay.
not cool.
I know. Yes.
He's ready to score, and the guy gets
Leo.
hit down.
103, okay, we're supposed to stop that, it's dangerous. Let's say we don't stop it for some reason, and he hits the mat with force. Bring him down that shoulder.
If he hits the mat with force, causing unsafe impact to the upper half of the body, you either got a slam or an unnecessary roughness, okay?
Okay.
And shame on you for not stopping it, but here's the problem. We can't always predict where they're going next, and some kids are pretty fast.
Exactly.
So it's unfortunate, but that is going to happen sometimes, Leo. The purpose of this rule and the purpose for this to be included also in your points of emphasis was for us to try to work on getting better at identifying when those positions are occurring and be prepared to stop them. And again, they don't want us to feel apologetic for it. Multiple times they say, err on the side of caution. Okay, that is the only two rule changes for this season. Yay. Okay, so they also gave me some points of emphasis which they'd like us to go over, and they are mostly the same points of emphasis that we have been discussing for some time now. Some of you guys have maybe heard about skin conditions, so briefly in passing. Once again, skin conditions came up as an article for, it should, it is a serious issue. And I'm going to let you read that section on your own. However, I want to highlight a couple areas as they affect us as officials. The communicable skin disease people, they're very concerned because we're not just dealing with ringworm anymore. We've got MRSA, herpes gladiatorium, and a number of things which are not nice to get. So we must, number one, make sure that we perform skin checks, always. Or when you go to your event, make sure that a designated on-site meet-appropriate healthcare professional has conducted those checks. It must be done. Make sure that you arrive early enough to do that. If you do the weigh-ins in your section, conduct those during the weigh-ins and request that the documentation for any wrestlers who have a suspicious condition be provided for you at that weigh-in. If you are the type of a section that only shows up in the weigh-ins that have already been conducted, I want you to go to the locker room, and we're going to get into this a little later on protocol, and you're going to request documentation immediately. You're not going to go look around and find anything and then ask for the document. They're going to provide them to you because they already have them in their hand. Give them to me. Okay. Matt, you jump.
Just real quick, I want to know if I'm reading this right and hearing it right. You go to a duel, and you're told that a designated person
designated on-site
has conducted skin. And I'm not talking about a tournament. I'm talking about a duel. It might Am I reading this correctly? Are you exonerated from doing?
You are in fact exonerated.
Okay.
Only when they specifically said that it was a
That
designated
someone-
on-site, meet-appropriate healthcare professional. How about that? That's a mouthful, man.
Well, they had to.
Is that,
You used to say physician. When Lon did it, it was a physician.
is that the home team's
The
responsibility?
home teams would be the one that would provide that, yeah.
How would we verify that that was?
You would have to
legit?
check with the host management. If you're at a tournament, you will always have a tournament director. You ask the tournament director, did you have a designated on-site meet-appropriate healthcare professional? If you're at a dual meet, you will also ask the home management. And that designated on-site person has to be available to both teams, okay? But it would be provided by the host management.
And does that need sectional approval?
No, no.
Okay.
You have permission to bring in a doctor. If you have the resources to do that, you have the ability to do that.
What
I can
type
tell you
of
that,
doctor,
so far, a doctor is only considered a medical doctor, a physician's assistant, or a nurse practitioner. Anything other than that doesn't qualify as a designated on-site, and it has to be designated. They can't be
To be
somebody they
honest
just
with
bring in.
A pediatrician does not qualify.
He's a physician. He's a
I
physician.
understand that, but he is not a dermatologist. and we can't
Physician.
issue with that.
If you're an MD, and a pediatrician is an MD, he can identify baby skin diseases.
What are the time parameters for that?
Oh, when can they do this? If the designated on-site meet-appropriate healthcare professional is on-site, they must inspect the contestants immediately prior to the weigh-in or immediately following the weigh-in. If they're not available for that, they can't do it.
MD, PA,
An
a
MD, PA, and nurse practitioner. That was identified, and each state has their own list. Some states may allow for a trainer to do it. New York State Public High School Athletic Association has stipulated only those three people can provide.
Doesn't recognize the DO.
No, no.
Okay.
I think a good rule of thumb.
It used to, but they've removed that.
Okay.
I think good practice would be if someone was to do a match and someone else conducted the skin checks, to make the coaches aware that, yeah, you have them done, but if a wrestler comes to the mat and I see something that could you overrule that? Like, in other words, you get there, someone's performed the skin checks. Now you're on the mat. Head reports to the table and you see something suspect.
The casebook actually talks about a similar situation. You can overrule the designated on-site guy to not allow them to compete.
Right.
But you can't overrule them to allow them to compete.
Right.
You can't say,
So
no,
they-
this is
the co-
fine. You can't do that.
Anybody who encounters this,
Because something could be
a
overlooked.
good rule of thumb would be to say, hey, that's fine,
But you're still looking.
but if I see something that I deem suspect, I can overrule, it's just so they understand.
And that's, listen,
And if you have any-
you have that authority. Let me make sure that we're not miscommunicating. If the designated on-site guy says, this guy's okay, no problem, and you see it and you don't think it's safe, you certainly could overrule that and not allow the participation of that contestant. If he says, no way you can go, you can't overrule that, okay? Yeah, tell about Tom here first.
Two quick ones. Now with the uniform change,
And by the way, it's coming in next year, not this year.
in our section, our chairman has allowed for that to happen. We still can ask the male wrestlers, in my case, to remove their T-shirt to check.
No. Here's the
Okay,
thing.
here's why I'm asking.
Okay, yes.
With the singlet, you have more skin available to see where these ringworms, etc., usually show up. With a T-shirt, they're hiding things. So what I did was I had them remove their shirts.
Our green book
And
talks about this
sure
issue.
enough, 3 kids had ringworm.
At this
And
point,
no notice.
you are in a unique situation being in the city league there because you guys can do things a little bit more independently. We are not in that position yet, so I would have time to find out the answer to that question. Currently, it's not an issue because the only person who's going to be wearing a T-shirt is going to be wearing that T-shirt with permission of the official. At this point, based on National Federation rule and New York rule, you're in a little unique position. So if you feel it's necessary to take the shirts off this year, I think you should have the right to do that. We are going to inspect the contestants and the uniform in which they'll compete at this point. That means only when you have specific concerns would you ask someone to lower their shoulder straps. You are within your rights to do that. And what is a specific concern? You may say maybe you see something a little bit and you want to see more of it. Or it's very possible that the opposing coach during the weigh-in observed something and said, that doesn't look right. I'm going to wait till Tom gets here and have him handle it. And he'll say, Tom, it was right here. you could ask that person to lower their singlet straps. Otherwise, absent any of those specific concerns, you will inspect them in the uniform in which they'll compete, minus their headgear. Of course, their headgear will be off. And if they're going to be competing with a suitable hair cover, they'll have that on so you can make sure that it is legal as well. And they're not allowed, by the way, to weigh in with the hair cover on. Yeah,
And the second part of that, we also require the medical stamp. We always have since the skin form was initiated.
That is a position that is held by an independent sectional group, and each section can make things safer. But as a group here, I can only interpret the way the state's supposed to call it. Each individual, like Section 6, could decide that we're going to make them have a stamp, and as long as they have to be on this official form. That's the key. As far as me as a state interpreter, my concern is that it be on the official New York State High School form dated 2015. Other than that, we don't put any other specific emphasis on them stamping it. But I know that you guys do, and there's nothing wrong with that. But I can't enforce making everybody in the state do that. However,
We caught a couple of forgeries, that's why.
I can't believe it. Okay. Wait a second. Let's go through the list. I got Steve here.
All right, so back to the doctor inspecting the wrestlers at an event. As an official for that event, can I still have the option to inspect the wrestlers, even though the doctor already did?
Yes, yeah. There's nothing that says you can't. It's just his question was, are you exonerated? Yeah, you are.
Okay.
But if you want to take a peek and you see something,
They say that.
you know what I'm going to do? You know what I'm going to do? If I was still reffing, I'm going to conduct my locker room inspection like I always did.
Yeah.
Just like I always did. I'm looking at hair, nails, skin.
I want to see the notes as well, make sure it's working.
And again, we're going to have those. And a little later on, I'm going to go into what our locker room protocol will be, and it's going to change a little bit. And we'll talk about when we're talking about changes to the Green Book. Yeah, Frank.
Two things. First, would it be wise, we got this on-site position, for the official to record the name of that doctor?
It would be. Now, my assumption is that whoever hired that person, in like the guy in charge of the tournament director, would probably have that information, but nothing wrong with that. However, what's going to happen in many cases, we're going to arrive in Section 5. You're going to arrive, and that guy's going to be gone.
Well, if he's the on-site physician, is he there for the whole event?
No. They conduct the skin inspection and they leave. They're only there because they only can inspect the contestants immediately prior to or immediately at the conclusion of weigh-ins. Once they're done with that and the inspection has been completed, they leave.
We're assuming that he is just there for the inspection, but usually somebody might be there for the entire event. You know.
Most of the time when they bring in somebody that qualifies, that's really a physician, they leave. Who usually stays are the medical trainers and those people who can deal with concussions, but they can't deal with skin issues. But yeah, anything you can do to protect yourself in the event of a potential lawsuit, if you have that information, good to get. So I would say let's suggest to our guys, when they tell you, yeah, it was a certified, a designated on-site guy, let's get the name and write that on the weigh-in sheet so we can refer back to that if it becomes necessary.
Or you can still do the skin checks yourself.
And again, you're going to do them yourself as well, but if an issue comes up, Frank's point is a good one. You really want to know who was this guy? Dr. Dalberth?
That's an action.
Yes.
In the Green Book, it discusses or identifies specific garments that can be used for weigh-ins. Now,
and that came from the Federation. That wasn't something we had just put in there.
Right, but I mean, it is in the Green Book.
Yeah. I believe it is under the weigh-in section that they must weigh in wearing a suitable undergarment, and it specifies that boxer shorts are legal, but that like basketball shorts and those kinds of things aren't. And it specifies in there what those stipulations are.
But it says singlets, cutoff shorts, basketball shorts
are not
allowed for weigh-ins. But yeah, we're looking at a skin check. If we're going to do it previous to a weigh-in, so we're standing there, and protocol typically in our section is we do the skin checks before they get on the scales because there's no reason for them to weigh in if they aren't going to pass skin check. Because then you get into confusion and all the other stuff. So now the kid's getting ready to weigh in. What I was hearing before, like Tom was talking about, the kids have the singlets on, they're all dressed ready.
Two different situations.
Okay.
In your situation, because people do it differently in different, many sections, they arrive and the weigh-ins are conducted.
Right.
And in that case, you're going to go to the locker room, request the documentation for any skin forms, and you're going to check the kids in the uniform in which they're going to compete. If you're fortunate enough to be at the weigh-ins, you're going to be able to do a very thorough skin check, and you're going to check those kids in that appropriate, suitable undergarment, which might only be just little boxer shorts. And that is the best way to do it, because you're looking at it, you know, you're making the guy turn around and everything. I see these coaches, they're just looking at the scale. They don't check the kids at all. They're just looking at the scale and writing down weights. So then when we get there and the weigh-ins have been completed, all we're doing is looking at them with their duds on. So there's two scenarios.
Right.
One, in your case, when you're doing the weigh-ins, you're going to have a much better skin check.
What I'm getting at is, though, if the coach could then specify, so listen, everybody's gonna put their singlets on, that's how we want to inspect them.
Read it again, singlets are not legal.
Listen to me. So they're gonna do that for the inspection. So we do the skin checks, and we do their hair, nail, skin, they've got their singlets on. Then they get into their other garments and get on the scale after they've gone past us.
They're misreading that rule then if don't allow them to do that.
Okay.
We're only gonna let them be in the uniform in which they're gonna compete if we're conducting the pre-meet inspection and we're not involved at all in the weigh-ins. If you're involved in the weigh-ins, you get to see the kids in the thing in which they're going to weigh in, okay? So that's a very decent question, yeah.
Gotcha, thanks.
Well, Steve, just for Mike, if you don't do the weigh-ins and do the skin check at the weigh-ins, and a coach sees something, and when you're doing your pre-meet duties and they have their singlets on,
right,
a coach could say, during the weigh-in, I saw a ringworm on this kid, and you can ask him to pull the singlet down, and if you see a ringworm, and correct me if I'm wrong, Steve, then you can transfer the knowing to the mouth.
And that's
That is
you know,
correct.
look at, yeah.
See, we were dealing with two separate issues. These guys actually do the weigh-in, so they're in a perfect position to see the kid, and they're not going to be able to pull him up for the skin check just to get by you.
I'm just saying if they don't do
Right.
the weigh-ins and the skin check.
Yeah. You know, we're sort of unique. Almost all the states have the referees do the weigh-ins.
Can we request it?
Here's the problem. You're gonna have dealing with, that's a contract issue. You're gonna have to deal with, because they're gonna say that's a change in work environment, and that's a whole other issue. You'd have to deal with that through your section. Yeah, you certainly can. But you're going to end up dealing with questions like, well, we're gonna get paid for doing the weigh-ins and that kind of thing, and that's an issue for some other group, not me.
That's what we did in section 11, is we got that included in our contract.
Yeah, that's how it has to be.
At tournaments, we're there 2 hours early when we're waiting.
Yeah, that definitely has to be part of your contract. It's nothing that a rules interpreter could be involved with whatsoever. I had a question, yeah, Tom.
What about a female doctor at the scales? I've had that multiple times, and I've had multiple complaints. And my thing is, my answer was,
doctor's a
talk
doctor.
to your sectional chair, that's
Yeah,
your hardest
that's what
position.
you gotta do. That is something that's beyond our
I mean, they're not nude, but I understand the complaint, that puts us in an awkward position. I didn't appoint that position.
Oh, right.
That was-
That's not an issue for us. That's something that they would have to deal with through the sectional chairman, okay? Because, gee, I've gone to a woman doctor before.
It's not You're a doctor, that's it.
Right, Tommy? I said, I went to a woman doctor before, she just laughed.
Steve Rogers.
Just wanted to point out that in section 6 in Southern Tier, typically for dual meets, we inspect the kids after weigh-in. We're not involved with the weigh-in.
Yeah.
Tournaments, we usually send 1 or 2 officials to the tournament for the weigh-ins, you know, the assigned officials. The head official, we always have him go to the weigh-in. They check the kids in tournaments as they come off the scales. But in dual meets, I always tell our officials, there's one question you need to ask those coaches when you go in to do your inspection, and that is, do you have any concerns regarding the skin condition of the opposing team? That right there, if you have your officials ask that opposing coach, if they have their singlets up, when you go to that locker room, you can check that kid out.
That's right, and they should write down the weights, the weight class.
I got a problem with it. Can you read that?
That's right, and that's just what that's exactly what Gene just said. The only difference is, you're literally asking the question, do you have any specific concerns? And that's a great question.
It identifies that specific wrestler.
Yeah, not just, that would kind of shitty to me.
If I got a kid if I have a 20-pounder who has a note, has a problem, I'm curious as to what the weight class below looks like, what the weight class above looks like.
If you have specific concerns, you certainly have the authority to lower them straps.
Perfect.
It's just that we're not doing it as a general rule of thumb, yeah. Because that would be your specific concern. Your 12-pounder's got it, I am concerned about these two guys.
And then, I guess my other question is for Gene. So we run our own tournament, a big one, and I'm after my last deposition, I'm certainly looking to get out of the liability business. is it best for us as an association to just hire that on-site
Yes.
and then be done with it?
Yes,
And
yeah.
that completely absolves us of any liability.
Well, you know how lawsuits go. They're gonna name you and
Right,
your
but I'll tell you,
grandchildren.
if we get one, even with 32 teams, he's looking at every single kid.
Every
I
kid.
do not want to go down this road again.
Okay.
That's what we did.
Here's the problem, here's the problem. They don't want to do that. They want you to do the inspection and only send to them the kids who are in question, because there may be 1,000 kids, but there's only 80 kids that have anything that, because there are going to be kids that are perfectly
I
clean.
get it, but that doesn't make me feel.
I know. And again, these are issues that are not handled at this meeting. They're done through your individual chapters, and then if that doesn't get it resolved, you handle it through the state committee of sectional chairman, not this committee, but the sectional chairman. This is not rules-related stuff. This is more of administration. Okay? I know that's not what you want to hear, but I'm not the guy for those answers. It's
Steve, I have a question about the gentleman back there with the uniform, the shirt, the compression shorts. If you come out of your section, your area,
you can't wear them.
You cannot?
No, he can't come to your section and not
What
follow.
section are you?
We're the city.
But they have different, a few different things, 'cause they're trying to generate some interest in the sport, so they're doing some different things.
Oh, they're like the Cavs.
And they can do that, they're independent. However, you wouldn't be illegal to wear those at a nationally federation event, because we follow their rules. That would be completely unfair. They would have to wear the regulation singlets. Or, here's what you could do, if you have the regulation singlets, request from the working official permission for each of them to wear t-shirts. A tight-fitting, single, unadorned t-shirt. Then they can comply, and then it'll satisfy some of their modesty issues.
And that's what they do. When they compete outside their section, they wear the singlet.
Right, and as I say, if there is a modesty question, they certainly could request permission to wear a t-shirt and make sure that it is single-colored, tight-fitting, and unadorned. Yes?
Steve, last night, I thought it was implied in due diligence, if that we disqualify a kid pre-meet for skin, that we then to also.
I'm coming to that.
Okay.
Remember I said about this locker room protocol, that's part of it, so let's stay with that, I want to do this systematically so I don't overstep something, right?
Just a quick question on that uniform change. That's not a mandatory thing, it'll be optional.
Oh, absolutely. When next year when they implement this rule, it's not going to be a mandate, it's going to be an option. It's going to be an alternative. Most teams are going to say, well, we're not buying new uniforms, we just got new uniforms, and they're going to continue to wear their singlets. Well, I'm guessing that as the rotation comes around for the wrestling team to get uniforms, they're going to opt for the new ones because they're pretty cool. I'm actually I'm going to buy one myself. Honey, I'm home. Get me done. Honey, I'm home.
Steve, I think a lot of coaches believe,
That are mandatory?
No, I think a lot of coaches believe that this two-piece will actually help to get more kids.
That is the belief. And they actually overtly state that. They think that it will help to increase the number of contestants. And we'll see if it does that, do that. Okay. Again, err on the side of what's best for the sport. Don't go to, here's what happens. You haven't even blown your whistle yet. You show up, you have a skin issue. This is when I get all the phone calls. It's Saturday morning at 7:30, 8 o'clock when all the skin stuff's going on. And the coaches are begging you, please, I didn't know, I didn't see it. You are the last line of defense for not just that one wrestler and not just to satisfy that one coach. You have to do what's best for the safety of everybody else that's involved, including yourself and your brother officials. I know it's hard and you don't want to be the badass, but they've known for a number of years what their level of responsibility is in doing proper day-to-day routine skin checks, and they have to be on top of it, and if they're not, then it's not shame on you guys, it's that they dropped the ball. So you have to be firm, because they'll try to shame you into letting that kid go, and you just can't. You have to be firm. And again, as you read through these articles, you'll see that's specifically what it says, but I'm paraphrasing their words. In addition to that, make sure that when you do a multiple day event, don't just show up at 9:45 for a 10 o'clock start. Make sure that your staff and your guys get there in time to do a whole nother skin check. And things can come up overnight. You must continue to do the skin check, and I would also check facial hair and nails, just to go through, just do the same routine you did. Doesn't take much longer, okay?
The designated physician is going to check in here right now.
They will not be, that's correct. They're just checking skin. But what I'm saying is, if you were the guy doing it, secondly, and I've seen for years, they'd show up and say, well, we checked them yesterday. That's not the case anymore. We must check them. Okay. Skin check, each day of a multi-D event. That takes care of that skin conditions. Okay. Control. Understanding control is the biggest issue in refereeing because it's so objective in many cases. Now, we have given you so many guidelines as to what is this position control, is this control, is this control, but this little article here talks about there are different levels of control. You have to gain control, lose control, or change control, all right? And the important thing to remember is, and I talked to Matt about this last night, the coach came up to me all irate one time, Dave, I need you one more time. He was mad at the tournament and he said, come here. Is this control? I said, I don't have enough information. If we were neutral right now, no, it's not control. If I were the defensive wrestler and I got to this position, yes, it is control. Okay? If I was already the offensive guy, it is control. But the thing that I'm trying to emphasize to you is we have a specific amount of control that we must have in order to be considered to be in control. You know, you've got to have the Iowa, the crossface, the far ankle, or you got to have the Iowa, the crossface, get hip to hip, or you got to have wrong leg in, under both arms, headlock. All those things we know. However, once you gain control, you only have to maintain that much control to be considered still the guy in control yet.
The problem is, this is poorly written.
I didn't write it. I didn't write it.
No, I know you understand, but the difference what you're talking about is criteria. Here it says restraining power. And that's the big difference, because a lot of coaches feel that because they're restraining the person, they're in control.
Yeah, yeah.
And they're forgetting the criteria piece. That's why
The part that we put in the green book.
This is why this is so poorly written, because you can have restraining power in many situations, especially in takedown. You can have a guy on his back,
Yeah.
but not meet the criteria
Of control, of control.
Control. So this is extremely poorly written.
Did I mention that I didn't write this?
Right. If you change criteria with
You wrote it.
restraining power.
I don't know what's in here.
If you change control or restraining power, you have more of what you're talking.
And we did change a sentence in the green book, which I'll get to, that sort of speaks to that point. Okay. So I'm not going to try to give you a big speech on control, but you should go through with your referees the information that's provided for you in the green book and show them the difference between the wrong leg in under both arms and the side headlock versus the guy that has to be broken down hip to hip and when a takedown can be awarded without breaking the guy off his hip. Go through those things at your meetings if you have time. Try to talk about when is there control for a takedown or reversal in that Peterson situation when the arms are locked in. And go through some of those things in the green book so that we can all become more consistent.
Standing Marshall again?
Did I get past that? I think it's in our program here.
Right.
I got it coming up. Unless I passed it, I don't think I did.
No, not yet.
Okay. The next section here on arm trap, that was under points of emphasis again, and it was in our little preseason guide, but we've discussed that at length, so we'll just pass over that. Sportsmanship and good behavior, we all know what that means. This seemed to be the emphasis on this was that a number of times kids are committing infractions and we're just letting it go. A swearing and we're saying, oh, just stop that, Johnny. And they're throwing their headgear and we're allowing things to go unpenalized. And they would like us to try to be more diligent and enforce the rules for sportsmanship and not just talk to the kid. Call it. If the kid does something unsportsmanlike, because, as you read this, you'll see it says, those can become teaching moments. When the kid does something that's not appropriate and he gets penalized for it, you've done your job, that kid's behaved poorly, you've done your job, and now the coach can go on and support you on that, or sometimes come over there and ball you out. In which case I say, Coach, this conversation you should be having with your wrestler, not with me. But that's another issue. Now, if a coach behaves in an unsportsmanlike manner because he doesn't like your call and he takes off all his clothes, that's a problem.
In some instances, it could be a cultural thing.
Yeah. Unless he's Mongolian. That was cute, wasn't it? I wish I was still coaching. I would have done that at the States. Okay. Now, flashbacks to the rule changes. This is just a reminder of some of the things that were adopted from last year's rule book. Go ahead and read through those. There's nothing there that should give anybody any kind of difficulty. They also provided me with an article on headlocks, which is something that we've discussed for a number of years because there is so much concern over pressure being exerted over the side of the neck and the throat. Breathing and circulation is such an issue. And with the increased number of contestants who are participating in martial arts and learning different techniques to choke a guy out, it's becoming more prevalent that these types of maneuvers are being developed that can actually make you go unconscious. They want us to be vigilant and doing several things. One is, when it becomes illegal, stop it immediately. Don't let there be any delay in time from the time you stop it. Or, if you think it's potentially dangerous, don't allow headlocks to go on for an indefinite period of time, because a headlock, which is legal, is by definition potentially dangerous, so you shouldn't have any pricking of your conscience for having to stop that match if you have some concerns over the wrestler's safety. Where we are finding this to be a particular problem is in the front headlock. Not so much the side headlock when they're on their back, but these front headlocks, they describe to a position where you must move. If they're standing, you can't just stand there. Many times you need to get down and look and see where is that pressure being applied. Is it across the throat, the side of the neck? Is he covering the mouth underneath there? And that's something you can't often identify from a standing position. And when they get down into their short offense, you need to get down there and check it. And the longer you let those front headlocks go, the more time the wrestler has to tighten it up, the more time he has to just squeeze the life out of the kid to loosen him up for the next period, because the kid's all dizzy by the time you let him out of there. And in most cases, those front headlocks, once the guy that's defending the position grabs the control of the elbow and pulls it down, in 98% of the cases probably, they never finish the move and it ends up in a stalemate. So why allow it to go 30 seconds when 5 seconds would have been sufficient? Okay? They give us 3 guidelines to look for. One is if there's redness in the face. In the standing front headlock, when you see the wrestler come up on his toes, that's a pretty good indication that there's being something. And then they say, the last one is if his arm becomes limp. If his arm becomes limp, you waited too long. Okay. Now, Dave, I hate to do this to you, but I got to show this move. This is a variation of a technically legal headlock because it has an arm encircled, and I'm going to try. It's about 9 months since I put this on anybody except my wife. Okay. They take what underhook here, and they've got this arm here. Now, I'm under the arm on this side, so I have an arm encircled. From here, they go real deep, and they lock on their own arm right here. Okay. Now, you can see this. See his arm? It's in the circle. The arm is in the circle, so it appears legal.
It's not good.
But look for this. You're looking for an underhook, overhook, and you see the guy, he'll drop his shoulder. When you see that, watch this hand. When he comes here, this guy's screwed.
It's not good.
And I'm just touching my fingers, and he's already feeling like scared. We need to be able to identify that move. Demonstrate this move to your officials. It's an underhook, an overhook, and he just drops down there like this, and he locks on this, and everything goes away. You can't breathe, you can't think. And
it's right across his throat.
And Steve, they also get there from a normal front headlock, then they sink the underhook.
Yeah. They do.
But Coach, there's also a very legal one. Would you get back in there, please? Which can be easily
confused with us.
Front headlock, underhook, right hand on far wrist. No, put your underhook, keep your underhook.
Yeah.
Take your right hand and grab his free wrist on this. Yeah.
Here. No, that's fine.
Right. See, some guys won't get what
this
that
is different.
is.
That's a big question.
I can grab this. When I come in here to grab my own arm, especially, no, the one that Tony just showed us, the legal one, yeah.
Oh yeah, that's super.
That's very different.
I'm not even going to put it down here, I was going to show you something.
I don't want guys to get
Here's what we're looking for, an underhook and an overhook. And the overhook side, when he comes under, he's not reaching down here, they're coming way up here. What is it?
Illegal.
It is illegal because it comes across the throat.
I mean, a few years ago.
At very least, you need to PD it. But what we can't have is that kid cannot stay in that position. Get him out of there. But by definition, it's going across the throat. It is illegal. But most guys will give you the benefit of the doubt and say, don't do it again. But you certainly are within the rules to call it illegal immediately.
A few years ago, that's what we said, it's above the elbow, we PD it, and tell them don't do it again.
Don't do it, exactly. And that is the protocol I'd like to see, but you certainly have rule book support. If you, for example, you just had the kid in the earlier round and he did the same move, and you're like, oh no. I remember in that club. But you have the judgment to, listen, It's because it's technically legal, but it's not legal because it's going across the throat. So by that, it's virtually illegal. Okay? Headlocks. Anyway, the front headlocks, just stalemate them, guys. Don't let them go on forever. As far as the rules regarding the ear guard, we know when we're supposed to stop the match. So we all know that. Just make sure that your collective organization understands what their responsibility is. But I would add to that, we still have a waiver in New York which allows there to be taping on the ear guard as long as it's not on the ear portion of the ear guard. Taping on the straps is legal in New York. We have a waiver, it's listed in the Green Book, but not on the ear guard. Okay? Special equipment. The special equipment rule is interesting. Guys are wanting to wear knee braces that are huge. They want these big braces and they bring them to you and they say, well, can you wear this brace? We're not making a decision on any specific piece of equipment. We're applying a certain set of guidelines to determine the legality of special equipment. Is it hard or abrasive? And if it is hard or abrasive, it must be suitably padded. They've added rules stipulating that it must be padded with a closed cell, slow recovery, foam padding, a minimum of ½ inch thick. Now I see a guy come to me and he's got a Don Joy knee brace on, and he's got what looks like my grandma's old silk stocking he puts over it, okay? And it's thin. It's like the material you'd see at a bathing cap. That's ½ inch, boys. Have you ever seen anybody come with padding that thick on their stuff? They don't. I measured it last night. It's ½ inch. I know ½ inch when I see ½ inch. And that's ½ inch. Yeah, that's right. So, what happens is, this is another situation where we get sort of shamed into saying, okay, I'm allowed, Joe let him wrestle with it on Wednesday. You make your decision whether equipment is illegal or not based on those 3 guidelines. Like I said, it's hard or abrasive, it must be padded. It must allow for the normal range of movement of the joint, and it must allow your opponent to apply normal holds. Okay? Now, if a person has a cast on their wrist, when you're wrestling a 112-pound kid, you expect him to have a 112-pound wrist, not the wrist of a 285-pound guy. So, in most cases, the cast by itself is going to be illegal. For number one, the cast is designed to not allow the full range of motion of the joint. That's what it's designed to do. You know, if you got a cast on your elbow, it's put on there to immobilize the joint. So it's illegal for that. Definitely hard or abrasive. I haven't seen the soft cast yet. Even the casts they call soft casts are kind of hard. But so now it's hard or abrasive. I got this wad on here that's this big, and I'm going to put a ½ inch thick padding on it. And the coach is going to go, wow, this kid was a sectional champion last year. You got to let him wrestle. If it was my kid, I'd cut the cast off because I'm an asshole. But you can't wrestle with it on. Okay? So. Just be aware that what our responsibility is, and don't let them shame you into allowing kids to compete just because. And here's what they'll say: his doctor says he's got to wear this knee brace. He heard it in football. Yes, that's good. He should wear the knee brace, but he's not legal to wrestle with it. And that's not all knee braces. It's just that some of them got literally steel sticking out of them. Not as much anymore, but it used to be an issue. Yeah, Tommy.
Quickly, back to the headgear. We're seeing more and more kids show up with that plastic.
Those are designed by the manufacturer and have been accepted as legal wrestling equipment.
However, if they get crimped and bent, they could be abrasive. You could have them not allowed.
They're both. They're pretty rubbery, right? Are they hard plastic? The ones you're seeing.
A hard plastic.
Hard plastic. If you think that it would be legal equipment that has become illegal through use, and allow them a referee's timeout to fix it, though. Okay, don't make it be illegal.
Right.
The other thing is you're going to see kids wearing these Morgan-style headgears that cover the whole head, the forehead. And those again have been decided to be legal. They are also manufacturing a wrestling helmet. This came up at a National Federation meeting. And the helmet that they're selling and saying that it's legal for NCAA and high school wrestling is not legal. And they have put a cease and desist order against the company. So these helmets that they're going to show you, and I haven't seen one, but I'm going to try to research them online. Tony, you saw one?
I saw them at the NCAA display.
They at the
and
high
they
school
claimed
level,
exactly that.
They put a cease and desist order on and said we're not allowing them. Okay?
It does look like a helmet.
Does it? Okay.
Yeah.
So, and I guess the packaging specifically states that it's been accepted by both of those organizations, and it's not true. Okay. make sure prior to the season, yes, Scott.
Can we just address, like special equipment that becomes
Illegal or inoperative through use?
through use?
You have, and anytime the wrestler starts off legal and something becomes illegal or inoperative through use, we will repair that under an official's timeout. We're not gonna use their injury time, because they were legal to begin with.
Even if it's special equipment?
Yes, yeah. It could be, their knee brace breaks,
Right.
or, whatever they have. They had it suitably padded and the padding came off.
The hair cover thing is
The hair
always-
cover, yeah, that's another issue. But yes, whether it's legal equipment or special equipment.
So if a guy's, say a guy used his injury time,
Yeah,
and to put that special equipment on, he used up all his injury time to do that. He comes out to wrestle, and within like 3 or 4 seconds, the tape pops off.
okay, you're going to be proactive in this, and you're gonna say, Coach, we're gonna take a few more extra minutes on my timeout, get it fixed this time around. Don't let them rush through it, get it fixed properly. You can oversee that.
Okay. Thanks.
That's a unique situation where a guy's trying to nurse a little extra rest time. You have to be proactive in trying to prevent that. But the rules do provide them to correct legal equipment, which becomes illegal or inoperative through use under an official's timeout.
But you can eventually.
In the Green Book, we gave you some rule book support for that. Here's what Billy's talking about. In our Green Book, it says, if the timeouts for special equipment or equipment that becomes illegal becomes so disruptive to the contest or occurs too frequently, you have the authority to start the injury clock. My recommendation to you is to say, Coach, let's get this fixed this time. If it occurs again, I may have to put you on the injury clock. And almost always, they take that extra few seconds to remedy it, which is sometimes as simple as, Johnny, give me your headgear. And they put another headgear on and go from there. Okay? As far as awarding near fault points, there was an article in this year's publication by Bob Messina. I don't want to bore you by reading it to you. However, I think it's something that we need to address everywhere, that we make sure that we concentrate during pinning situations. It's too easy for guys to relax once they start their count. They slide down in there, and the guy's at 45, and they start their count, and they get 1, 2, and by the time they get to 5, the guy's almost back to 90. You have to concentrate, and it's not, I'm not aiming to you guys, but we have to teach our younger and less experienced guys to concentrate and stop that count when they get to 45 and then restart it once he's back in the grade. So often you get lulled to sleep. Like, you get 1, 2, and keep watching that 45 to make sure that it's being continually met. I won't bore you with any further on it. Just make sure that your guys know. And also, there's a tendency for
1, 1, 1, 1 if you're not.
that's still 1, 1, 1, 1, 1. And that's illegal listening like that. Now, the other thing is, in the early part of the season, your younger and less experienced officials should time themselves with a stopwatch because they get excited. Next thing you know, 5 seconds is really, if they timed it, 3 seconds. Because you have to learn to shut yourself down and do that. And it takes some sort of
2 hours a second.
Yeah.
3.
Yeah, the first 2 are quick, right?
Especially at the end of the period.
Yeah.
5 seconds left.
Now, I'm going to move along to the modified section. There have been some changes in the modified rules that were adopted by the New York State Public High School Athletic Association. All those changes are listed in the back of the Green Book. They are all dealing with the number of points that can be earned during the like at the high school level, they're limited to a number of 20 points per season. A tournament is 2 points, and a building is 1 point. They have a similar process that they use. They were formerly limited to only 12 points per season. It's been lifted to 14, so if there's any coaches here, you should be aware of that. You're now allowed to have 14 points. And a 1-point meet is a meet in which a wrestler participates in one or two contests. That constitutes a 1-point meet. And a 2-point meet is a meet in which wrestlers are allowed to compete in 3 or 4 contests. And the 4 was added. Prior to this year, you weren't allowed to compete 4. So now, a 4-point contest, they're going to be assessed 2 points. These are all things that we don't need to know necessarily as officials, but if you're meeting with a group of coaches, please make them aware that these changes have been implemented by the state. All right, in addition to that, another change is that with section approval, and you're going to have to check with your section to see whether it's been approved or not, an overtime period is permitted at the modified level. For years, it was not permitted, but now, with section approval, again, check with your sectional people to see whether your section has adopted that procedure or not. And it also stipulates that that period shall not exceed 30 seconds and can be started in either the standing position or the referee's position. Your question is going to be, who decides? My answer is going to be, check with your section to see who decides. Okay, we haven't been provided with those answers, but they are forthcoming. I have a message into Marty, and I will find out who's going to decide whether they start in the standing position and whether they start in referee's position. And if they start in referee's position, who makes the decision as to who gets choice? My thoughts are that we will have a disc toss, or they'll decide to circle the first point scored, but we have enough problems. Let me get the answer for you.
On the modified level, they go down. Take out 1 and 2.
Weight control remains the same. And then lastly, under modified, with sectional or league approval, here, this can be done by an individual league at the modified level only. Beginning this year, they can wear an alternative wrestling uniform. They can still wear a conventional singlet. However, they can also wear tight-fitting compression shirt, tight-fitting compression shorts, or they can wear a tight-fitting compression shirt with a singlet over it. That's a decision that's going to be decided on by the section or the league at the modified level. Okay. All the game rules remain the same. I would like now to go to the section in your meeting folder that talks about the changes that we made to the Green Book. First of all, we made a huge change. Thanks. Frank Marotta came up with this great idea. Because we all call it the Green Book, let's literally call it the Green Book. All right, so it's now the Green Book.
Too much work in that. Don't cost
Now I'm a prop comic, right?
I know.
Much more than it costs.
50 cents a piece now. Honestly, this guy is unreal on how reasonable he is with his pricing. He was like 20% of the other bids. Like, are you sure you got the right? Yeah, he was very, very inexpensive. All right, let me go over the changes really quickly here. Of course, one of the changes I made because it was necessary to change the dates. Wherever it was appropriate, Frank and I changed the dates. In addition to that, I changed all references to photos to illustrations because as you look in the back of your book, they are no longer photos, they're cartoon characters. So somehow they've got some computer-generated pictures, and maybe they'll be better. I don't know. Yeah, it is. Now, I want to throw this out there. I went on a website called referee.com, and I searched through and I found photos, and they give you some perfectly sharp, crystal clear pictures in color of skin conditions and positions and all of those things that we have had for years in our book. It's called wrestlingref.com. When you go there, there's going to be a lot of videos and a lot of, you make the calls where you look at the scenario, and it's a good learning tool. But if you go there, please look at the videos and the instructions with an open mind. Some of the stuff that's on there is no longer accurate. You know, there's a 100% accurate video on figure fours on the head, but it's not accurate anymore. It talks about all, and if you were a young official and you went on there, you would have so much incorrect information it would be bizarre. However, the pictures are pretty precise and almost all accurate with one exception. If you go there, the photo that shows a guy in a Peterson situation says, in this situation, there is control when either a leg or arm is controlled. What it should have said, there is control in this situation when either leg and an arm are controlled. See the difference? Mm-hmm. So make sure that if you do send your guys there, that they're aware of that, because I don't want there to be confusion. Okay. Now, the next thing is pretty important, and that is the change in protocol as officials, how we're going to handle our pre-meet inspection of contestants. What you'll do now is, when you arrive at the site for a dual meet, you're going to go to the coach or the head table and obtain the official weigh-in sheet. Take the official weigh-in sheet with you to the inspection of contestants. You now have their entire roster in your hand. Go into the locker room. You should always request that the coach be present. If for some reason he wants to excuse himself, he should have a representative in there because he has a responsibility to notify you that all his kids are going to be properly groomed, adequately equipped, and all the other rigmarole. So he should be in there. If they decide that he has other responsibilities, he should send someone there in his proxy. Okay, so you're going to request from them immediately these official skin forms. The skin forms that will be accepted are the New York State Public High School Athletic Association forms, which I have provided copies of to you in your packet here. The dated 2015 in the corner, those are the same as last year, and they're still legal. They are available if any coach ever asks you at nyspHSAA.org.
2015?
2015, that's when they were edited and accepted, and so they're still good. That's the date that you will see on yours, 2015. There were no changes made. Okay.
Listed right at the top of the form.
It's, yeah, on the upper right, you see it there, right? Okay. Okay, now, item number 3 here. Once you do that, you're going to go in, ask the wrestlers to line up by weight, count the number of contestants, and compare it to the number of kids that have weighed in. It has been too easy in the past for kids to hide out in the urinals and to hide under the bleachers and get away without even being inspected. We're going to put an end to that. So, get your official weighing sheet, take it with you, request any skin forms, you've got them with you. Now, additionally, if you have a kid, you're going to look at every skin form and you're going to find the person on that weigh-in sheet that has the skin form. John Jones has a skin form. He has non-contagious gluteinitis. Okay? On the weigh-in sheet, after his name, you're going to put skin form, or SF. That will show you later on in the day that he had a valid skin form. It may not be so important at your dual meets, but you need to know that there was a skin form. But where it will become important is when you are doing a dual meet tournament, and you show up in the morning. If you don't follow this protocol of putting down John Jones has a valid skin form, later on in the day, an official comes in to work a later session and sees something suspicious. Now, he says, "Coach, what is this?" And the coach would say, "Well, I gave the ref a skin form." How do you know? It's not listed anywhere. And his responsibility was to provide that skin form during the inspection of contestants, but we had no record of it. So we were in this little sort of a vicious circle and kind of a pissing contest. Well, I'm not lying. Well, I'm not believing. And to avoid any of that, we will now indicate anyone with a valid skin form on the weigh-in sheet that they have performed. And we're going to do that at all contests, so there will be no confusion and we won't forget to do this. Okay. In addition to that, any wrestler who is deemed by the referee to be ineligible because of his skin condition, the referee and the coach will notify the opposing coach that this wrestler or these wrestlers have been disqualified due to a suspicious skin condition. That wrestler's name will be crossed off the official weigh-in sheet and will go to the head table that way, so that the coach on the other team will know that those wrestlers are no longer in the lineup. In addition to that, should the question be asked, the weigh-in does not count toward the 50% rule, and the wrestlers who have been disqualified as a result of that are not to participate in the warm-ups or introductions. Okay, they need to know that. The last thing you need is a kid with something on his face out there doing front bridges on the mat that you're going to have wrestlers working on in just a few minutes. So, if someone violates that rule, and even though he's been disqualified, you detect it, you catch him out there doing warm-ups or doing the introductions, the violation of that rule results in unsportsmanlike conduct against the head coach. Frank, you seen?
One other thing, it's not just putting that sheet on the table where you crossed out the name. The official must notify the opposing coach.
I said that.
Say that?
I said that. I said both the coach and the referee must notify them. Yeah, I did. That's okay.
So Steve,
I bore me too.
Steve, if he's disqualified and they start the pre and all that, and he's sitting on the bench with his clothes on.
He sits on the bench. He just can't participate in the handshake. We don't want him to be contaminating the mat or potentially contaminating the opposition. He can sit on the bench though. He's not banned from those.
Is this all written somewhere?
Yes, it is not only in the program of wrestling, which is where we got it, but I have included it in the green book so we have access to it. And that's why this section, it's brand new this year.
Hey, Steve, real quick, they can move to the senior night, baseball cross, I'm sure.
I'm sorry?
At senior night, they can still go out there and get their own.
No. Oh, with their mom?
Yeah.
Yeah. They can give their mother a ring warm, I don't care.
Hey, Steve, how do we know whether they, for us in 6, we're going in after the weigh-ins have been done. So how do we know if this weigh-in is counted or not counted? I mean, how?
Oh, it's not an issue for us.
Okay.
We as far as the 50% rule, I throw it out there because there are some people who wear 2 hats in this room, but as far as we concern, we don't care about. That's not up for us to care about the 50% rule, but I just like to throw that out there. Tony, you'd like to know that, right?
Yeah, you have to bring postseason.
Right.
Every weight class you weighed in at 50%.
And sometimes it's a huge difference because you have to make 50% of your weights at a specific weight to do that lower weight. And so they
But
want
how
to know,
do
does
they
this count or
verify
not?
that? I mean, if you made it-
We don't have to worry about it.
Okay.
It's nothing that we have to worry about.
Perfect.
Just on a note, if that coach allows that kid to participate and roll on a mat,
So the weight's done and it's logged on the teammate weight, we're
You
gonna go
could,
ahead and
yeah,
scratch it out.
he's got a good point. If he does go out there, and if it's something where you can't even see, you don't know where it is, it's on his knee, we might not do it. But if you know it's on his face, you would be within your rights to say, ring mop the mats. But do keep in mind that the unsportsmanlike against the head coach is listed in your green book, so that they know we got some teeth now, you know? All right?
Steve, just real quick on this?
Yeah.
So they did their weigh-ins, the kid made weight, and now I see this, that doesn't count for his.
If he hasn't wrestled yet and he gets disqualified, they're going to take that weigh-in away from him.
They take it away.
They will.
Okay.
If once he competes, though, then he's stuck with it.
Right.
And let's say he's gone out and competed, and he's halfway through the first period, and you notice something, you go, hold on, this guy's got the cooties. He's still the weigh-in counts because he participated in it, and it would count as a loss because he would now have the default, and it would be a loss.
The weigh-in still counts.
But the weigh-in counts for the 50%.
Well, if 2 wrestlers weigh in the same weight class, just because one goes out, the other doesn't.
Yeah, so he gets a forfeit? His weight
Yes,
doesn't count?
yes. Because he didn't get disqualified.
Right.
You still got check.
Right. Okay. The next thing here under Rule 4, in the back of your book under points of emphasis, it describes, it has it in there for some time, and you may have not noticed it, but it talks about cold sores. Cold sores are considered a communicable skin condition, should be treated as such. So when you see someone with a cold sore, you must ask them, you must check their documentation to make sure that those cold sores are not communicable, and if they don't have the form, they can wrestle. That's right in the back under points of emphasis in the National Federation book. The next one changes Rule 5. On the bottom of your skin form, you're going to see under where it talks about the various skin conditions, they describe a condition called molluscum contagiosum. And it says on there, and this became somewhat confusing, because wrestlers would have on their form, this kid has molluscum contagiosum, but he's okay to participate. And on the bottom it says, when treated with curettage and hyfricator and covered with a bioocclusive bandage, the wrestler can wrestle immediately. So I go, oh, well, who didn't know that? So I go, I got to figure out what this means. So what it means, a curettage is this little scraping, scooping implement that they use to scrape skin away. It's what they use when they do a DNC on a female. All right. A hyfricator is an electrical device that burns the skin and stops bleeding after minor surgery. So what they do is they go in and they scrape this molluscum contagiosum off the wrestler, they burn it so it stops bleeding, and then they put a bioocclusive bandage over it. Bioocclusive bandage is a thin, light polyurethane bandage which is permeable by oxygen and water, but not bacteria. I wish I invented that. Okay? Now, my question to the state was, we're not doctors, right? What in the world are we doing here? He said, here's what you do, Steve. If the document that says this wrestler has molluscum contagiosum, but can wrestle, but it doesn't, it is not contagious, but it doesn't say that these 3 procedures have been done, that the curettage, the hyfricator, and the bandages being used that I described, and again, you don't need to memorize these words, they're at the bottom of your form. Then he's not wrestling. even though the note says, because that was the criteria that they were required to use. If you're doing meetings for coaches, you may want to emphasize that, because there's going to be a lot of doctors that don't understand that their level of responsibility is to indicate that on the form, okay? And if it isn't on there, don't let them go. Because it takes sometimes up to 2 years to cure it completely. It's not an easy thing to get rid of. You don't want to get it done.
They show up at the scale with that bandage on. Do we ask them to remove that bandage?
If it's that special bandage, it's that light, thin, curative thing, and only if they've got this molluscum contagiosum note, I would not make them take that bandage off.
All right.
If it's anything else, if they don't have a note, you got to make them take a bandage off. But this particular instance, they've tried to comply, and it's one specific, and it is a clear bandage. So it's not going to be the same as the tape you typically associate with taping a knee or an elbow.
So for us, this should indicate that happened.
It must be on that sheet, and if not, do not allow them to compete. Yeah.
Alright.
I never heard about the treatments. I never heard about the specific treatments. I knew about molluscum contagious, but I didn't know
All right.
about
In addition to that, we included in this book, this year's book, the website information for people that want to learn about weight controls, that they have access to that readily. We also added a sentence, and this is what I was mentioning to you, Billy, under 525, added that control is not only defined by a position, control is demonstrated. When two wrestlers fall to the mat and they just fall and he falls on them, and then the other guy gets up and faces them, they have been in a position of what would look like control. However, no control was ever demonstrated, and so there was no restraining power. Let's start with me. Okay. Okay. Another thing is just a reminder, it's been in the rule book forever, but I think it's something that we have kind of pushed to the side, and that's when the two wrestlers are facing each other in a neutral position on the restart, they must be stationary. They shouldn't be bobbing and weaving, and you know, we're not blowing the whistle here. We're going to get in there and we're going to stop that kind of accident. And I noticed in a lot of college referees, because we don't want the kids to charge across, they're literally stepping in, holding them like this, and then pulling their hands back. But make sure you tell them, you need to hold still, or be stationary, whatever your term is, but we can't allow these kids to be timing their starts.
We have to say set.
You do say set?
Just like you do on the
That's very good, I like that.
Yeah, Haggerty, college level, is really good. He gets right in there with those blows.
Yeah, boom, he said, yeah. And it's not, because when you try to just put your leg in there, it's not as effective. It's literally touching. And you don't want to keep touching your sweaty body, so he uses his elbows. Okay. The next thing is the standing Merkle. We've added some, because in this, there's a interpretation that we got from the National Federation. Screw you, Billy. You remember you and me talked about this, and you were right and I was wrong? I said this in front of people.
Oh.
All right, here's the thing. In the photos that you see in your book, where they're doing the wrong leg in, he's under both arms, or he's under an arm and got the headlock. Okay. Imagine that position from a standing position. All right. So, let's say you're going for a reversal. And the guy's behind you, and you kind of shove him, step around like this. Now, your leg is in between his legs, and you're under both arms. When that position is attained beyond reaction time, that will be considered a rear standing position. Dave, let's just show him. So you'll see this. Here's the thing. The guy can sometimes he'll come from here, and he's here, and like all of a sudden I end up here. However they got there, okay? Now, 1001, 1002, the National Federation said this will be considered a rear standing position, and a 2-point reversal has been earned. My theory was that in order to be a rear standing position, you'd have to be here. But they said, no, we're going to give it. Now,
Just stepping in between, or does he have to have the leg?
look, he's already, no, just here. Wrong leg. You don't have to have it hooked, just here. They said this would be controlled. Now, if the moment they get here, Taylor dives out of bounds and Dave follows him. I mean, let's not. If the moment they get here, they immediately go out of bounds, before reaction time has been met, a 1-point escape. Okay? And the reason bring this up jokingly because that occurred as a sub scuffle with Dake and Taylor, and 2 points were awarded.
But he also, he locked up that, he locked up the head first.
But here's the thing. At that level, they're much more quick to give the points, and Pat McCormick said he agreed with the call, so it's good. But so I wanted to find out how we would call it. And they said that if it's beyond reaction time, award the points, consider it the rear standing position.
So that's
They go on right away.
That's
just give them
standing reversal.
It's a standing reversal.
2.
With the side headlock too.
Side headlock, the 2 pictures that you see in your book, if either of those positions are attained, but they're standing, points will be awarded.
How long reaction time is it?
A maximum of 2 seconds. Historically, by National Federation Interpretation, reaction time is set at a maximum of 2 seconds. However, it can be less in the event of Rule 733, locking your hands. Okay.
By the offensive referee.
Yeah, there is standing articles.
That's why we're keeping him around.
No, when you said if it was
Wait, hey, Steve?
Yes.
So my understanding was that at the expiration of time, for example, there is no more reaction time. What you see is what's
You've
there.
got to take the picture. And it's not consistent, and I feel bad about that, but the same thing applies with the toes in rule. The moment they hit, you don't really have reaction time. You can't funk out of it or something. If the control was there when they landed, reaction time is much more minimal. And the same thing has to happen when the buzzer buzzes.
So literally just about everything else, if that buzzer buzzers, there's no reaction time anymore. You take a picture of it, except in this instance that you just described with that rear standing situation. The buzzer buzzes, there was no reaction time, or they went out of bounds, so there's no reaction. You give them 1.
Yeah.
Okay. Wow. All right. Think about that.
Okay. Where was I? Where did I end up? Okay. Standing Merkel. If the wrong wrestler reports to the table, it is not eligible for that weight. It's something that comes up regularly. And in our book it says, if the wrong wrestler reports for a weight class, and it's a legitimate mistake, they can be withdrawn. But that left it was so vague that people were jerking around with that rule. So several years ago, we said, well, what constitutes a legitimate mistake? And only if the wrestler who is reported is not eligible to wrestle in that weight class would they be able to be withdrawn. An example would be an overzealous 99-pounder ran out there for the 145-pound class. We would say, you're not eligible for this weight class. But if the kid that was 106 ran out there, he waited at 106 and he ran out there for 113, he qualifies for 113. And if he was the wrestler who was obligated to report first, that wrestler cannot be withdrawn. But the only thing that will be considered a legitimate mistake is if the wrestler who was reporting is not eligible for that weight class. Okay, now, take it the other side. If the wrestler who reports for a weight class is not the obligated wrestler, that wrestler can be withdrawn. Are we clear on that? So if it's my turn to report first, but for whatever reason, the non-obligated team sends their wrestler to that table, then I report, and he sees that his guy doesn't want to wrestle me, he wants to send somebody else over, they have the ability to withdraw that contestant. I now can't be withdrawn. Now, once they send their other kid over, now he has officially reported in the proper sequence, and then he can't be withdrawn.
What if he goes to the mat, crosses the 28-foot circle?
That's different.
If he, wait,
wrong
kid, the wrong kid that's, this guy is supposed to report second, goes first, goes out to the 28-foot circle.
Come on, because they have to report in the proper sequence. You shouldn't even be out there. There's no problem. You just have to. You can be withdrawn.
So
just keep in mind the proper sequence. Yeah.
We just tell them what happens if the wrong guy is not eligible for that and the whistle is blown.
Okay. I appreciate you bringing that up. Okay. The 99-pounder, he goes out there. Let's take it to the middle of it. Your 52-pounder comes out there, and it's a 185. Okay, it's supposed to be wrestling. And you go, ooh, these kids are one kid big, right? And you blow your whistle, and the wrong kid reported. Once the whistle's been blown, that match has started. You've got an illegal contact. You've got an ineligible wrestler that was used. The match becomes a forfeit. All right. The results of that match there, the right wrestler, the wrestler who qualified for that weight class, is given the win on his record. The other wrestler gets a loss on their record. However, the match becomes a forfeit and will be wrestled to its conclusion so as not to affect the win-loss records of the other contestants. They will still wrestle it till its conclusion. At the end of the night, if the team that used the ineligible wrestler wins, the score reverts back to 1-0. If the team who had the legal wrestler wins, the score stands. But the win-loss records for each of the other kids will be whatever their win-loss records were.
Yeah, you don't want to get into
Hang on, we got a question here.
The individual record isn't changed, it's basically just the dual meet.
Yeah. The win-loss records of each kid, they want to keep that intact because they have consequences later on in the year for postseason competition. But the win-loss record of the team is affected because the wrestler who was ineligible, his team lost. And that is a team loss, yes. Yeah.
Very easy to prevent, have the official, go right to the edge of the mat, use your disc, indicate who goes first, hold the other guy back. Once they report, sure.
Yeah, but that's,
A lot of guys will do is, they will tell the coach in their pre-meet duties, they'll tell coach, I will stand to your side of the table like this and indicate to you to come out. And I don't care who comes out over here. I'm not paying much attention to that. I'm waiting for you. It's your obligation to report. And I watch this kid come over. As he's coming over, I'm checking his laces. Make sure he's got a headgear on. He gets there, checks in. And I ask these guys. Now, if he's already standing here, and this coach is trying to be shrewd, he has the ability to say, never mind, taking him back. Well, if he comes over and he says, Billy Rogers, let's go. Because he officially reported. Now,
Right. Oh, good.
because now he's reported and his sequence has been added.
I've seen that, though. I've seen the coach.
You have the decision though on Wesley, because you don't want a coach to be able to play little tricks on you, like, you know, you have the, I said, you could say, coach, he just gave me his name. In my opinion, he just reported. All right.
Hey, Steve, back on the ineligible wrestler, what if he goes out and accepts a forfeit? Is it the same thing?
Yes, you can't accept the forfeit and wait for which you do not qualify.
Steve, just on another note.
Yeah.
Team A is supposed to report first.
Yeah.
The kid runs out to the table, out to the middle of the mat, and the B kid goes to the table.
Okay.
A still has not technically reported to the table,
Right,
so.
he needs to get to that table.
He needs to get,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
B can still be withdrawn
And another
because A did
thing,
not
they
return.
brought this up, and I heard this call, but this came up at the meeting, they said, if the guy who's obligated to report, reports to the table, and it's probably gonna be in a dual meet, and then goes back to the team bench, stalling or unsportsmanlike conduct. And I'm like, oh, hi, I'm not gonna make that call, but they want them to report directly from the table to the center of the mat. Because here's what happened, they went over there, they report, and then they come over to the sidelines and they got, chit-chatting and, slapping them on the butt. It's not such a big deal in tournaments because they come over there oftentimes with the ankle bands. But they said, when that happens in dual meets, we should be calling for stalling. I don't blow my whistle anymore. I'm just telling you what they told me. You know what would happen is, I think the best way to handle that is to, the very first time it occurs, remind the coach of the team that just had that occur and ask them to not do that. Now if it reoccurs, you can call unsportsmanlike conduct.
Pre-meet duty.
You can handle your pre-meet duty, you can't handle everything. But that would be something to bring up for sure. As far as Salto and Souffle, we added after Salto and Souffle, that there also is a possibility of unnecessary roughness call. Because sometimes wrestlers will be returned to the mat with force that is unnecessary, but they haven't lifted their opponent. And the argument could be, it says here in order for a slam to be called, you have to lift your opponent off the mat and return him with force. So in the absence of a lift, just don't call it a slam then, call it unnecessary roughness. That refutes that argument, and they don't have a leg to stand on. But before, though, they could make it a legitimate argument without this rule book support. In addition to that, we added a slam can be called when unnecessary force is applied during a return, regardless of who hits the mat first. Because there is an old expression about, well, my guy hit first, so he can hit him as hard as he wants, and I don't know where it came from, but it does not apply. The only thing we're worried about is the amount of force. Who hits first is not a factor. And the next thing, we add a description of the 4 stages of a chicken wing. We describe it this way. When the wrestler is at 90 degrees to the long axis of their opponent's back, nothing wrong with that chicken wing. When they start to slide up to about a 45-degree angle, this is the place where we're going to warn them, keep it legal. If they go all the way so that they're parallel with the long axis of their opponent's body, and that is potentially dangerous, it should be stopped right then, okay? If they get parallel to the long axis of their opponent's body and they apply pressure, then it's illegal. So the fact that they touched their hand on the shoulder and were parallel momentarily, if you can get to it before pressure is applied, you can call a PD only when pressure is applied. So that you've got perfectly legal, we're talking to the kid, we're stopping it, penalizing it, okay? And we've added those, included those into the green book.
Steve?
On that note, I know on that position, kids will grab the other arm from underneath, right? And now put the chicken wing in. Now you're not getting any pressure on that though.
That is listed in the green book under reinforced chicken wing. That's what we describe as a reinforced chicken wing. And so be aware, when they are controlling this wrist under here, and it's in your green book, when they control the wrist here and the chicken wing is being applied here, they can have parallel pressure all day long and they cannot create a twisting hammerlock, okay?
Right.
So that's my baseline.
Steve? Steve?
Yes.
Just quick thought, so we stop it, he gets it up on top, we stop it once, we stop it the second time, third time we go to penalty? That's typical protocol?
Repeatedly creating potentially dangerous situations, that would fall under that,
And
yes.
we're going 2 to 3 based on
2 to 3
judgment?
would be, yeah, would be
Okay.
the limit there, yeah.
Okay.
Yep. We gave a little expanded description of how stalling would be called in the tiebreaker. Last year, we had additional information that was provided to us by the National Federation, but because this is only a 2-year publication, it had not yet been included in our Green Book for this year. So we've now included that information, which is not new to us because we brought it in last year, but I'll remind you of what it says. When they're in the ultimate tiebreaker and they get into a standing position, a rear standing position, the obligation for the guy in the rear still exists, the same as it did in regulation, to attempt to return their opponent. It's not necessary for them to successfully complete the return, but they must attempt so just as though they had in the regulation match. If they get into a standing position in which the offensive wrestler has a leg in the air, they have the exact same responsibility to attempt to return their opponent that they had in regulation. Now, once they successfully return the wrestler to the mat, now they can begin to ride. They have no obligation to attempt to pin. Spiral rides, 2-on-1s, tight waist ankle, legs, any of those things with no attempt to improve will be considered as controlled wrestling and will be fine. Something they can't do is, from a standing position, lift them up and hold them there with no attempt to return them to the mat. That's going to get you a quick stalemate right away. The other thing they can't do is drop to an ankle. You know, you've seen it. They drop to that ankle. They can't drop to 2 ankles. And they can't jump into a side headlock and just freeze the position. Now, those are 3 things that we have specifically identified as quick stalemate situations. There may be others. If others come to your attention, notify us and we'll include them. At this point, those are the 3 things that jump to mind readily. But if you're looking for a term to use, we say that when they get into position and stop wrestling and freeze the action. So you see it, they'll just literally stop moving. That's going to be always a quick stalemate, and if they return to that or any other similar tactic, it doesn't have to be the same tactic, a second time, they will be subject to the rules governing stalling, which in this case could be a warning, unless they've already been warned in regulation, in which case it's over, because that would be a point. Boom. Okay?
So again, in that rear standing, arm locked up.
You got to bring them down within a reasonable length of time, approximately 5 seconds or so. Not bring him down. You must attempt to bring him down.
Attempt to bring him down.
And that could be he's lifting, he's tripping, but he's not doing this.
Right. So again, Steve, with the spirit of the rule, dropping down to 1 ankle, in regulation, we call that stalling.
Yeah.
We don't give them a stalemate.
We do
so
not.
Now, why does it change there?
The rules
in the spirit
committee,
of the rule.
Yeah, the rules committee felt that they had to come up with a situation that would provide definitively a winner. We've already wrestled 6 minutes, then we wrestled 1 minute, then we wrestled 2 30-second tiebreakers. And they said, we recognize this is not consistent, but we need some means of creating a winner. So we're going to say to this wrestler, if you ride him, you win. To this wrestler, if you score, you win. However, they recognize that there would be potential for serious abuse of this rule by the guy doing these tactics. So they said, we can't completely eliminate stalling, but we really don't want you to call stalling, so we're going to let you give him a free stalemate, which essentially is we're giving him a free stall. But that's why the difference. They said this portion of the match is different. One guy is going to start in his choice of position, and the other guy's never going to have a chance to get his choice of decision. So there is a difference here. It's not an equitable scenario, but there needed to be some way of finally ending this contest.
Okay, so with the arm trapped in a lift, it's not potentially dangerous, it's a stalemate.
Right. Well, if it's still
Because that's where it's gonna
wait a
go.
minute. If he's got the body lock in the lift, it's still potentially dangerous. A body lock in a lift is still going to be potentially dangerous.
So that first, not a stalemate.
Yeah. I'm talking about when he's got a body lock with no arm in there at all.
Okay.
And he lifts him. Okay, I see what you're thinking. No.
He's walking around.
He's got, because it doesn't happen often, but here's another thing that happened. Defensive man stands up. Offensive guy drops down to a single, swings across to a double, and lifts him up. Now, he cannot walk around like this. He's got to try to get him back to the mat. You see the thing there?
Yeah.
That's probably more likely to occur than the earlier description I gave.
Steve?
Ready? Yeah?
Multiple, like, first time he drops down to a near ankle, he stalemated. Restart him. Second time, they're wrestling, he comes up with the single leg, he doesn't do anything with it. Right.
Yep. I just think of it this way. He gets one extra stall. I mean, they don't say it that way in writing, but I say it that in my head. He's going to get one extra stall. They can call it a stalemate if they want. And another thing that we had to change, because the National Federation for years had a different definition of what ended the match. The definition of a match in New York and National Federation for years was different. We are now the same. So we used to say in our green book, if a wrestler had earned a technical fall and then the wrestler who won by a technical fall committed a flagrant misconduct violation prior to the handshake, that not only would he lose the 3 points, but the opponent would be the winner. Because we are now using the National Federation definition, that's no longer true. Because National Federation says once you've earned that technical fall, the only way you can lose is by flagrant misconduct. However, the match is over. It's over. So there's no winner of that contest. Both winners get a loss on their record. Okay?
Nobody advances to the next round.
That's correct. Nobody advances. And next year, you all have copies of that skin form in yours, right? I put mine on. Yeah. No, they don't have to be in color. However, they must be the original. We will not accept a copy of the skin form. You will be looking at an original. And you're going to have guys say, oh no, I have to keep the original with the school nurse. I have to keep it in the principal's office. Tell them to change their procedure because ours require them to provide us with the original. Now that original copy will be handed back to the coach. We're not keeping it. If they want to provide us with an original and a copy for our records, thank you. But they must have the original, okay? Because, again, too much corruption was occurring with these printers and stuff, fabricating material. All right, I'd like to open up the floor now for questions. Yeah, Dave.
I'm sorry, Steve, just to back up on the technical fall, flagrant misconduct.
Yes.
You reward the technical fall, that match is over.
That's right.
Then if flagrant misconduct occurs, but you still don't have a winner?
You don't have a winner.
How come it's not just a team penalty?
You don't have a winner. It's a 3-point team deduction for the flagrant. He loses any points he earned in that contest. In this case, it was a technical fall. He's going to lose those 5 points. But this other wrestler doesn't get to win the match because the match was already over. By definition, the match was over once the 15-point advantage had been earned. Just like if...
I I understand.
Okay, but I think I copied.
I understand wrestler B who has lost a match.
Yes.
I understand that he's not being awarded the win. I don't understand taking the win away from wrestler A.
Yes, I see what you're
because the match is over.
Right, right. However, any time with flagrant misconduct, even though the match is over, they retroactively remove any points you earn in that contest. Even if it's a tournament, all the matches that he wrestled earlier in that tournament, those all go away. Now, as far as his record, I don't know whether they'll count it as a win or a loss on his record, but all the points he earns goes away retroactively, even for the matches that he wrestled earlier. As far as that counting on his record, that would be something as an official. I don't know whether it counts as a win or loss on the record, but it doesn't matter to us.
It's a loss in that dual meet.
It is a loss in that dual meet, darn right, yes. Does not, because he can't score points, he cannot score points. Because you're going to remove not only the points that he would have earned, which in this case is 5, deduct 3 team points, require that he sit out his next scheduled event, and fill out paperwork. The only exception to them being able to keep points that they earned would be in a dual meet tournament. You cannot go back and retroactively remove the points in earlier dual meets because of the complications that would occur in scoring. But in that dual meet, and that's why the rule says, once a wrestler wins the match by technical fall, the only way they can now lose it is to commit a flagrant misconduct violation. And that's not New York, that's National Fed, okay? And then you had another question last night, which was a real brain twister. And I was thinking about it. And we wanted to know if it's going to happen. At some point, we're going to have a transgender person want to weigh in. And so, he brought the question. That will be a situation, that will definitely be a situation that occurs, and it will not be up to us to make a decision as to how that will be treated. What will happen is...
Clarification on page 4 under on-track.
Yes.
It says, officials should pay special attention to the wrestler who's lifted off the mat on track. Should it say we must stop potential dangers?
What I try to do is, I give you the exact language that they provide me, and then I paraphrase to try to tell you the right way to call it, but I often don't change their language because I don't think that's fair for me to editorialize what they wrote. So I write what they wrote, and then I try to explain to you what I think they meant. I'm not being condescending, they're intelligent guys, but sometimes they could be maybe written a little more clearly. But yeah, in the situation that they described there, we should be diligent in watching. We should be stopping in the case where they lift. In most cases.
We must stop it.
Yeah, yes. Now, if you read in there, does it specifically say, and I don't recall, does it specify that it's in a body lock? I don't think it does.
Yeah, it says,
not on page 4.
On page 4, it does not specify body lock, though, does it? Yeah. Okay? Because the body lock is the one we're looking for automatic, okay? So there is some ability to just watch and make a decision, okay?
Right.
Yeah, I can't always memorize everything, but I thought that there was 2 sections in here where it specified body lock and another one where it just talked about lifting, okay? What other questions are there for us to ponder? Wow. Okay, yes, Scott.
Did they change the language when it comes to regards to bad time? An example as far as, like, used to say something along the lines that a wrestler could be put at disadvantage.
Yeah. That came out 4 years ago, and here's what he's talking about. There used to be a stipulation in our green book that said, never take away legitimate points earned by the wrestler who was put at a disadvantage as a result of bad time. And it gave an example of a wrestler who the match should have been stopped for warning on the top guy. The match should have been stopped. Now, the only person put at a disadvantage was the bottom guy because he didn't get his fresh start. Now, he successfully completes a reversal and pins his opponent. Should that pin stand? And in Lon Coleman's eyes and in my eyes, yeah, that pin should stand. Because you made a mistake as an official and didn't stop the match, and this kid overcame your mistake because the only one at a disadvantage here was the person who didn't get the fresh start. The Federation will not allow that stipulation to exist. And I actually submitted a rule change proposal that suggested that we'd be able to do that. And they said no. Another example is, and this can happen to us, and it's going to make us look like idiots. Following a second injury timeout or a 2-point stall call, we forget to give the opponent choice of position. Scotty, you should have your choice of position, but I forget to give it to you. All right? This kid just took a second injury timeout. You go back and you wrestle, and you pin the guy. That kid's coach could come over and say, Steve, poor Scotty never got his choice of position. Now your position could be, I was gonna take standing anyway, and I won the match and I pinned him, so you should just take it like a football penalty, and I declined the bad time. They said you can't do it. But I am going to re-propose it because it's patently unfair. And look, it's bad enough we made a mistake. Now the freaking kid overcame that mistake, and we're still gonna allow this to occur. It doesn't seem fair to me, and I'm working on it, Scott. But they didn't even think about it. But next time I'm gonna be much more thorough in my description, and hopefully get it passed.
What they're saying now is that
You have to re-wrestle the bad time.
re-wrestle the bad
You
time,
must.
no matter what
It's
happens.
patently unfair.
Thanks.
Well, the thing is, that would help, yeah. Especially the choice after a 2-point stall goal. Anything else? Okay, just feel free to call me, text me, email me. Yeah. See you on Sunday.